Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about opportunities for UK exporters in the Caribbean, the second in a series of webinars about Commonwealth markets brought to you by the Institute of Export and International Trade. My name is William Barnes-Graham, the Executive Editor at the Institute, and I will be your host for this afternoon. And on the next slide, you'll see that we have two fantastic speakers today, both joining us from the Caribbean, indeed. Brian Benjamin, who's joining us from Trinidad and Tobago, is a vastly experienced trainer with accreditation from the World Customs Organization, and is currently supporting some of the Institute's work in the Caribbean. Brian will be giving an overview of the Caribbean market and will later talk about key considerations for services exporters. And it's also great to welcome Dadria Smith, who's a consultant and tutor for the Institute's Academy, who specializes in tariff classification and free trade agreements, and is joining us from Jamaica today. Dadria will talk us through some of the key rules and requirements for trade between the UK and the CARIFORUM group of Caribbean nations. On the next slide, though, you'll see that we're going to begin today's webinar with a poll to find out a little bit more about you, our audience. So we are asking you, do you already trade with Caribbean markets? And the options there are yes, we export, yes, we import, yes, we do both, or no, we don't trade at all with the Caribbean at the moment. While you're answering that poll, some quick housekeeping notes from me. Firstly, you can contact me with any comments or questions using the question panel on the control window to the right-hand side of your screen. We hope to get to a number of your questions today, but please note we cannot guarantee we will get to every question in the allocated time. As such, I'll be prioritizing questions that have relevance to the wider audience, so I won't be going into company or sector-specific queries as such. And please note that if your questions are short and clear, I am more likely to read them, simple as I am. Finally, as already mentioned, you will receive access to today's slide pack, as well as a recording of the webinar in a follow-up email we will be sending over the next day or so. So that's the housekeeping notes from me. I'm now going to close the poll. Thank you everyone for responding. And it does appear that today's webinar is a timely one because 60% of you do not yet trade with the Caribbean. So hopefully this webinar will support you to gain confidence and do more trade. 29% of you do export, only 1% of you import, though 10% of you do both export and import. So it's roughly around 40% of you do some trade, and the rest of you do not. But at that point, on the next slide, it's now my delight to pass over to Brian to talk about the opportunities that are out there in the Caribbean for UK businesses, whether you're already trading there or not. Over to you, Brian. I can't hear you, Brian.
Morning, everyone. Afternoon, everyone. Still morning where I am. Would like to thank the Institute of Export for allowing me the opportunity to speak at this webinar, Export Opportunities in the Caribbean. Most of you have not exported, some of you have exported, and we would like to share with you information in terms of the Caribbean market, who we are, and as part of your export strategy, for those who already export, and for those who intend to export, part of your export strategy is to ensure that you know the market. The Caribbean market, in terms of size, next, has vast opportunities for UK exporters. The population of the islands of the Caribbean are indicated there. If we just take those indicated on the left, you would see you have 5.6 million. And if we include Guyana, Dominican Republic as part of CARIFORUM and Montserrat, we have a population of close to 17 million. Who we are in terms of the Caribbean. The Caribbean has a long history of relationships with the UK in terms of trading. Over the years, we have had trading partnership existing between the UK and the Caribbean, and it was formalized through Lome 1, Lome 2, the Cotonou Agreement prior to Brexit, the CARIFORUM EU-IPA. Under the CARIFORUM EU-IPA, UK as part of the EU enjoyed access into the CARIFORUM Caribbean market. And I was saying earlier on that you would hear us referring interchangeably Caribbean and CARIFORUM. Don't get mixed up. Basically, we're speaking about the same set of countries in terms of the agreement. When we moved into the CARIFORUM UK IPA, and Dadria will go into the question of preferential tariff rates and other aspects of the CARIFORUM UK IPA, the idea was to secure continuity, that continuity that was enjoyed by UK as part of EU, that continuity into that CARIFORUM UK IPA to ensure that there is preservation of market access and that the opportunities enjoyed under the EU would continue to be enjoyed. For example, using EU material and processing them in your exports to CARIFORUM Caribbean states to ensure that you can trade freely with the Caribbean region. Next. As indicated, these are the main countries of the Caribbean that are covered, including the DR as part of Dominican Republic as part of the CARIFORUM. And we have Haiti there. Haiti is yet to sign the IPA and yet to be part of the whole arrangement. And I didn't even, when I was looking at the population, I didn't even add the Haitian population. So in addition to the 17 million that we spoke about earlier, you would recognize that Haiti is an addition to the market. Let's look at recent trends in terms of exports from the UK to the Caribbean. And this is data from 2017 to 2021. And we have pharmaceutical products, cereals, tannin, beverages, essential oils, optical, articles of steel, electrical machinery and equipments and parts thereof. These are the major exports that have taken place between the United Kingdom and the Caribbean. But we are looking at opportunities. The opportunities could take several forms. The opportunities could take increased exports in these areas and also exports in new areas, which I will deal with in the end of my presentation. The Caribbean market. As an export person looking to enter the Caribbean market, you must know what the characteristics of the market is. One, we are a traditional market. As indicated in the long history that would have existed between the Caribbean and the UK, we would have the taste for the UK goods would have continued for generations. The Caribbean region has a growing tourist population, and based on that tourist population, which comes in a number of areas from the UK and also Europe, and also other parts of major continents, we have that tourist population that is growing, and there is the need for increased goods. Then, in terms of the diverse nature of the populations, we are able to require goods, a range of products that are diverse as the persons are. At the same time, while we have that diversity, we have a one Caribbean in terms of who we are and based on the history of one Caribbean in terms of how we look at goods coming from outside. We are open to trade. The Caribbean is open to trade. We have signed the agreement. The agreement is there. The extent to which it can be utilized by UK exporters is open to us. There are direct and varied modes of transport from the UK to the Caribbean. there is a keen interest in traditional UK items as indicated based on our history. And to top it all, in terms of your labeling requirement, we speak English. This English is inherited to a large extent, and we speak English so you don't have to change your labels to cater for the market. Let's look at the potential opportunities as indicated earlier. In addition to increasing those that, in terms of the trends, there are potential opportunities that exist in terms of research in the market as to moving forward. Used vehicles, 5 years and under. We drive on the same side of the road as UK, which is we use right-hand drive vehicles. There are vehicle parts based on, again, the history. We have a number of vehicles that are also British vehicles. The question of snacks, drinks, pastry products. We have the industrial supplies. And when we get to services, we look at oil, drilling, and mining. So while we have services in the industrial sector, we also have the goods that also go with the services. And then we have tools that are, again, based on history, that have been used for years, that can be increased in terms of the traditional relationship that have existed historically between the UK and the Caribbean. And also clothing, in terms of the clothing that are summer origin that can be used in the Caribbean. These are some of the potential opportunities based on research that are available to UK exporters. And based on this webinar, we would like you to grab these opportunities and make the best of the opportunities available in the Caribbean region. I thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Just before we hand over to Dadria, we've had a couple of questions come through already. We had Vishal and Mohit both asked a similar question around some sectors. So they've asked if you could say a little bit more about opportunities in the e-commerce sectors and the green sectors such as solar and renewable energy.
Thank you, William. Vishal and Mohit, the Caribbean region is very much involved in e-commerce and the green economy and renewable energy. While a number of Caribbean islands have the whole question of fossil fuel, we are moving towards that solar renewable energy. In fact, the CARIFORUM as an institution has created the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. And their mandate is to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency investments, market, and industries in the Caribbean. In Trinidad, we have a specific energy chamber which caters for, beside the fossil fuel, also caters for the question of solar and renewable energy. And information as provided in the Department for International Trade website has a number of opportunities that exist in the markets of the Caribbean with reference to e-commerce. And as you send your question to William, and at the end, you will get more information in terms of e-commerce, solar, and renewable energy within the Caribbean. Thank you, William, and Vishal and Mohit.
Thank you, Brian, and yes, thank you to Vishal Mohit for the question. Really good question, and yeah, thank you again, Brian. Conscious of time, and we'll be hearing more from Brian later on about services trade and in the Q&A later as well. But we're going to now pass over to Dadria on the next slide, who's going to talk us through some of the rules in the UK CARIFORUM EPA, which Brian's mentioned, and some of the other requirements for trade with the Caribbean. So over to you, Dadria.
Thanks, Will, and hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Thanks, Brian, for giving a great overview of the Caribbean market. Now I'm going to briefly look at the opportunities to increase trade by taking advantage of the preferential tariffs associated with the EPA in place between the UK and Caribbean countries. So as Brian alluded earlier, that prior to Brexit, the UK's latest trading relationship with the Caribbean would have been facilitated and governed by the EU/EPA with CARIFORUM states. However, when the EPA ceased to apply on the 31st of December 2020, in order to continue the trading relationship with the Caribbean, the UK signed a continuity agreement in January 2021 and further finalized a new agreement, which is the UK CARIFORUM EPA, which largely mirrors the EU EPA to ensure companies continue to trade on the same terms before the UK left the Union. So the UK CARIFORUM EPA is a trade agreement between the UK and CARIFORUM states that makes it easier to trade in goods and services by removing or reducing tariffs and obstacles to trade, which in turn provides opportunities for businesses located in the UK and CARIFORUM states. Now, the EPA has no expiry date, so this provides certainty and predictability, which is a big plus for trade between the territories. The EPA also covers other trade-related issues, such as allowing access to procurement market, the protection of IPR. My focus, however, today will be on business opportunities arising from the provisions on preferential tariffs and rules of origin. Next slide, please. So the EPA makes it possible for businesses to maximize on opportunities by taking advantage of preferential tariffs. So all goods from the Caribbean to the UK enjoy duty-free, quota-free access except arms and ammunition. This provides a predictable market access and creates opportunity for UK businesses to experience direct cost savings because they can source unlimited inputs and other products from the Caribbean once the rules of the EPA are followed. From the perspective of UK exporters, the EPA provides market access to 14 CARIFORUM states, which is approximately 25 million consumers. So in return for duty-free and quota-free access to the UK market, the CARIFORUM states agreed to eliminate and reduce tariffs on many goods that originate in the UK, thus allowing importers in the Caribbean to pay less or no duties on UK goods. So UK goods can land in the Caribbean at competitive and reasonable price, so as to attract more UK customers there. Next slide, please. The tariff treatment to be accorded to goods imported from the UK are listed in Annex 1 to Annex 3 of the Economic Partnership Agreement. While the UK grants substantial tariff cuts on imports from CARIFORUM to the UK, the tariff treatment on UK imports is varied depending on the CARIFORUM state. The agreement basically considers the different levels of development of each CARIFORUM state. So you will find varied tariff treatment in the CARIFORUM state depending on the product. Generally, you will find that the tariff treatment on imported UK goods can be either an elimination of customs duties, a reduction in customs duties, which is phased out over a period of time, as well as some sensitive products that are excluded from tariff liberalization. Next slide, please. The products that qualify for duty-free treatment upon entry into CARIFORUM, they basically have no comparative advantage and is very unlikely to develop one in the near future. Examples of such products that can enter duty-free are tea, fertilizers, vaccines, crude petroleum, oils, fire extinguishers, and printers. Next slide, please. Some examples of products subject to phase reduction of customs duties include fresh or dried fruits such as grapes. There is also spices, fish products, domestic vacuum cleaners, and spark plugs. It is important to note that majority of products that have phase reduction of duties, there will be full elimination of duties by 2023. That's around 90.2% of tariff lines by the year 2023. As it relates to the exclusions, the EPA allows CARIFORUM countries to protect sensitive products that may struggle to compete against UK imports. So during the negotiations, it was agreed to retain tariffs on such products. And this is around 9.8% of the tariff lines, which come mainly from the agricultural sector and a few from the industrial sector. Examples of such products include fresh or chilled vegetables such as tomatoes, and there is no preferential tariffs on honey, rice, and sugar. Next slide, please. So rules of origin determine the economic nationality of the goods. That is the country where a product was sourced or made, which is necessary to determine whether products qualify for preferential tariffs under the EPA. The rules ensure that only those goods that originate in the territories of the parties to the EPA benefit from preferential duty-free treatment. To claim preferential duty treatment, the goods traded must meet the rules of origin. The goods must therefore originate in the UK to qualify for preferential treatment in the CARIFORUM state and vice versa. To claim preference, a certificate of origin must be presented, and as it relates to this EPA, it would be the EUR1 movement certificate. Next slide, please. So the rules of origin for the EPA require that the goods be wholly obtained or substantially transformed, to claim preference. Wholly obtained refer to those products obtained entirely in the territory of a party to the EPA without addition of any non-originating materials, that is materials from outside of the UK or CARIFORUM. The agreement contains a specific list of products that are considered to be wholly obtained, for example, live animals and agricultural produce. Substantial transform rule makes it possible for businesses to use materials from countries that are not a party to the EPA to manufacture products. Hence, goods can be manufactured using materials imported from outside the UK and CARIFORUM, with the final product being treated as originating. Now, the substantially transformed rule is guided by product-specific rules, which is found in the agreement itself. Generally, the rule may require a product to meet a value-added requirement, where the value of non-originating materials cannot exceed a given percentage, or where a specific process of manufacturing is required to meet the originating criteria. Or the rule could be a change in tariff classification, where the final product must be sufficiently different from imported materials so that it moves to a different tariff classification altogether. The rules can be complex, but you have customs and various organizations that are available to guide you in understanding the rules. In addition to the product-specific rules, the EPA also includes general provisions that provide additional relaxations, such as cumulation, minimal processing, and direct transport. So cumulation is really the ability to use materials or carry out processing in another country with those materials or processing being treated as originating when incorporated into the final product. As Brian alluded to earlier, UK importers can use EU materials or processing in their exports to CARIFORUM states and still benefit from the preferential treatment. As it relates to minimal processing, the EPA provides a list of operations that are insufficient for products to be regarded as originating. Examples include painting and polishing operations, and affixing or printing marks, labels, and logo on products or their packaging. All right. As it relates to direct transportation, this is another consideration. The shipment from the UK to CARIFORUM, the EPA requires products to be transported between the territories without entering any other territory except for transshipment or temporary warehousing, provided that they remain under the surveillance of customs authority in the country of transit or warehousing, and they do not undergo any operations other than unloading, reloading, or any operation designed to preserve them in good condition. As it relates to consignments that are transported through the EU, should the occasion arise, whether it is for transshipment or temporary warehousing, such shipments may be additionally be split, stored, labeled, or marked, provided they remain under the surveillance of customs in the EU state of transit. All right. So the rules of origin provide flexible options to source your foreign inputs so that products can qualify for preferential treatment when entering CARIFORUM or EU markets. If the goods do not meet the rules, then the MFN or relevant custom duty will be payable in the country of import. All right. Next slide, please. So when you're trading with the Caribbean, there are certain rules and standards required to get the goods released into the market. The rules may differ depending on the importing country. Generally, you will need to comply with trade and transport documentary requirements. So for goods to be cleared and released into the market, customs procedures and regulations will have to be followed. So the importer or consignee will need to complete a customs declaration and provide supporting documentation, which is obtained from the seller or exporter. And documentation include the commercial invoice, the packing list, the bill of lading, and the EUR1 movement certificate if preferential treatment, duty treatment is being claimed. There is also regulatory requirements such as sanitary and phytosanitary requirements for animal and plant products. For example, the presentation of health certificates from the UK for animal and animal products is a requirement, along with an import permit from the relevant authority in the Caribbean country. You have to consider technical standards as well, and these apply to products. Products have to comply with packaging and labeling standards and quality checks. Bear in mind that some goods are also prohibited and restricted from being imported, depending on the country, in keeping with their trade policy and safety measures. Examples, pesticides, chemicals, medicines, agricultural products, and motor vehicles require an import permit. While the buyer in the Caribbean market has the responsibility to ensure that the relevant permits or licenses are obtained before the goods arrive in the Caribbean, you would not want to be in a position where after the goods are shipped, it is discovered that they cannot enter because of restrictions or prohibitions. So it is good to do your due diligence before the actual export. Next slide, please. So to find specific information related to a product and requirements to enter a particular Caribbean country, the gov.uk is one of the resources that can be used to obtain information. For example, if you're seeking information on exporting to Trinidad and Tobago from the UK, you can access general information on Trinidad and Tobago. You can get information on how to get your goods out of the UK and how to get your goods into Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much. Will, back to you.
Thank you, Daja. That's terrific. Really detailed as well. So thank you for that presentation. And yeah, that tool on the last slide is always really useful for people to find more information about tariffs as they apply to your particular goods. Just before I launch the poll on the next slide, just to note that we get some really good questions for you. Thank you everyone for the questions, but please do note that we're not going to go into specific products as such. We might ask a few questions about sectors generally, but we're not going to do product specific questions because they won't be relevant for the wider audience. But I'm going to launch the last poll for today. You may be glad or thrilled to hear. We're just going to ask you, what are the main challenges for you in exporting to the Caribbean? That should be. Options there being distance, tariffs, rules and standards, lack of market access, or other. If you're saying other, please feel free to type what that might be in the question field. While people are answering that poll, Dajo, we had a question from Gerald, and I think you sort of alluded to this already, but he's mentioned how the CARIFORUM deal or the EPA seems to much more benefit importers into the UK of CARIFORUM goods than it does exports the other way round. Is that right? And kind of will gradually that balance be redressed?
Okay, thank you, Will. So UK exporters can benefit from preferential tariffs in CARIFORUM countries, and the preferential treatment ranges from zero customs duty to reduced rates, depending on the product and the destination country. So to claim preferential treatment, the export product must meet the rules of origin, and an EUR1 movement certificate must be obtained and presented to customs in the CARIFORUM country. So yes, it covers exporters as well. It's a two-way agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Daja. I'm going to close the poll. So I'm going to close that now. So the results. So clearly we needed better options here, but 10% distance, 10% tariffs, 13% rules and standards, 28% lack of market access, and then the other. So thank you everyone who's typed in other. Henry has said cost of shipping. Suj has said the market size, I suppose. And Cameron has said trying to find the right partners in the market. So thank you all three of you for saying what your other option was, and thank you everyone for responding to the poll as well. But conscious of time, I'm going to hide the poll, and on the next slide, to talk through some of the considerations for services traders in the Caribbean, I'm going to hand back over to Brian. Brian, back to you.
Thank you, Will. Now, Dadre would have just mentioned those areas in terms of tangible goods. Services is intangible, and how do we measure it, and what takes place in terms of understanding services exports? So, in understanding services export, we look at several modes of services export: cross-border supply, which involves e-commerce digital trade transactions. We look at mode 2, which talks about consumption abroad, wherein nationals of one country consume services overseas. Mode 3 talks about commercial establishment, inward foreign direct investment, particularly via the entry and setting up of foreign affiliates of overseas firms. And mode 4, temporary entry, short-term consultants, technical experts, investment seeking investors, or business of services sellers. These modes are great opportunities for UK exporters within the region, and they exist in the areas of manufacturing, maintenance and repairs, transportation and travel, financial, business services, cultural, and the recreational sector. Based on these opportunities, while we have not been able to collect the kind of data that we would want, we recognize in the research that there are a number of opportunities existing throughout the Caribbean region for the expansion in these areas. In fact, in the area of manufacturing services, as an example, in recent times, one particular UK manufacturer has set up shop in Trinidad and Tobago to manufacture their products. Bear in mind that as you do a UK exporter, investing in manufacturing operations in Trinidad and Tobago has access to the entire CARIFORUM marketplace. The CARIFORUM market is a free trade area, and goods can be shipped from within the CARIFORUM to 7 million, a population of 7 million in terms of that free trade area. And there are some opportunities that exist in the manufacturing services sector in terms of investments to ensure that that marketplace is fully utilized. In addition, within the CARIFORUM region, there are bilateral agreements or free trade agreements that exist between the CARIFORUM region and other Central American, South American countries. And in terms of the bilateral market, there's a 40+ million population in this bilateral market. So in terms of the manufacturing services as an example, then we have the transfer of technology and financial services as a spin-off in terms of the manufacturing, in terms of the services sector and opportunities that exist in the Caribbean for services. It's never a smooth road. And sometimes when you look at the services sector and when you look at the World Trade Organization, UNCTAD, there are challenges that exist in a number of areas in a number of countries. Most countries have problems in terms of challenges with the services sector. But specific to the services sector in the Caribbean region, we recognize that there are trade policy barriers in some of the Caribbean countries in terms of trade policy and services sometimes not getting the kind of priority that is required, so that you have some barriers there that has not been updated in terms of the entry of services. Then there is the recognized cost of trading services. Some countries in the Caribbean, or I didn't say most, some doesn't mean all, some doesn't mean most. Some times you may, depending on which Caribbean territory you want to enter, you might have some barriers or bureaucracy in terms of foreign direct investment attraction. And to the extent, coming back to the trade policy barriers, depending on what the policy on foreign direct investment is. You have some countries in the Caribbean that give citizenship by investment based on the value of the investment within the region. You have some Caribbean islands that have not gone that way, but there are opportunities that exist to ensure that there are a considerable amount of foreign direct investment attraction taking place within the region. In fact, I dare say that within recent times, what has happened to CARICOM as a region is that the region has recognized the need for foreign direct investment, and there is a push towards encouraging and ensuring that there is an increase in foreign direct investment and to reduce the cost of doing business within these countries to encourage the services from other countries, or UK exporters can take advantage of these opportunities to ensure moving forward. As indicated in the presentation by Dadria on the similar tariffs, we also have some similar tariffs or charges or those costs assigned to services, and they are different throughout the region. Then you have services restrictiveness. In some sectors, there are some, based on the competition that exists within the region, there's some restrictiveness that exists in some sectors. Some sectors they are high, some sectors they are low, but the opportunities exist. Let me take note here that we should not be disenchanted by these challenges. These challenges exist not only in the Caribbean, these challenges exist in a number of countries as recognized by the World Trade Organization and UNCTAD and other organizations. These challenges are similar throughout countries in the world. Some are more in the Caribbean, some are less in the Caribbean, but the challenges exist and they should not deter us in terms of trying to grab opportunities. The way forward for UK Caribbean services, the way forward based on the recommendation coming out of this webinar, is for the UK exporters to identify interesting industries that they would want to enter the Caribbean with. Amongst the UK exporters, there should be the development of a coalition of services industries with an emphasis on the Caribbean based on the identified interested industries. The research on the offerings for development and expansion within the Caribbean in terms of services. After that, there would be the need to build relationships with Caribbean agencies that are dealing with services. I mentioned earlier on in terms of, let's say, the investments in the Caribbean renewable energy institution and those kinds of projects. Then develop modes and modalities. How are we going to do this? How are we going how are the UK exporters going to enter the Caribbean? How are they coming as a group? Are they coming sectors? Are they tackling sectors? That must be established. And part of the CARIFORUM IPA agreement, there's a services aspect of it. To a large extent, the services aspect of the CARIFORUM UK agreement has not been fully utilized, and there is the opportunity for a united private sector involvement in the negotiations to ensure that a number of things are included in that CARIFORUM UK IPA to ensure that UK exporters can take full advantages of the services aspect of the CARIFORUM IPA. My friends, this webinar would have given us the opportunity to share information with you with reference to UK exporters, both for goods and services, exporting into the Caribbean. It's a start. It's the beginning of the road. For some, the journey has already started. And I trust that you would use these opportunities and take advantage of the opportunities to ensure that you can send your goods and take advantage of the services available in the Caribbean region. I thank you. Will, back to you.
Thank you, Brian. A lovely optimistic note to finish on. And yeah, I hope everyone has found those, I suppose, 3 presentations useful. But we're going to now answer a few more of your questions with both Dadria and Brian for the remaining few minutes of the webinar. So I'll start with a question for Brian. It's come from John. A few people have asked similar questions, but John has asked, what organizations are there who can introduce me to verified agents and importers to purchase my food products in the whole of the Caribbean region? And I guess, Brian, could you say a little bit more about how UK businesses could find partners in general in the Caribbean?
To a large extent, a number of the larger islands, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago in particular, there are some conglomerates that operate large distribution chains. Those distribution chains can be approached in terms of ensuring, and they don't only distribute for the particular country. For Trinidad and Tobago in particular, some of these large distribution chains have distributions of the islands, and they also distribute, so they consolidate in Trinidad from outside the region and then ship to of the islands in terms of distributorship. So that there's some established distribution chains happening within the region. Based on John's question, there is no one single organization, but a go-to place for any of these to get that kind of information would be the Chamber of Commerce in the particular countries. And we have some major chambers of commerce existing within the region: Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Jamaica, Barbados. We have a number of chambers of commerce existing. We also have the Caribbean, the British Caribbean, the British Caribbean Chamber of Commerce, that can give information in terms of particular countries, but there's no one particular organization that exists. The question of the integrity of the distributors, again, you have to any relationship with the exporters and would have to be a relationship that has to be built to ensure that integrity moves forward in terms like any business relationship.
Thank you, Brian. We've had a few people asking about how to find partners in different sectors, so hopefully that will help all of those questions. A question from Edward, which is actually for me: will we receive copies of the slides? Yes, you will. We'll be sending over the slides to everyone shortly after the webinar finishes. Dadria, if we can bring you back on, a question from Sandra. Sandra currently exports to St. Lucia and would like to expand her market to Jamaica and Barbados. However, due to red tape and the COVID pandemic, we had to suspend trade. Do you have any tips for resuming and expanding our Caribbean trade?
Thanks, Will, and thanks, Sandra, for your question. So I'm not too sure of the circumstance for the red tape. It would depend on what is the cause of the red tape, but sometimes it can be related to not having the proper information or even enough information about the product requirements and clearance procedures. So you could try to obtain as much information as you can about the requirements. There are several resources available both in the UK and in the Caribbean markets. As I mentioned earlier, gov.uk is a good resource that can be used from the UK, and the customs authorities of the Caribbean countries is a good source for information on duty rates, rules of origin, and other customs procedures. Additionally, some Caribbean countries have trade information portals with extensive information on imports and export requirements. Jamaica has a trade information portal that you can visit to obtain information on trading goods and market access information. including information on tariffs and standards. So in short, for Jamaica and Barbados, research can be done to determine the requirements for market entry, and then, just make every effort to comply. Thank you.
Thank you, Dadra. I hope that was useful, Sandra. Brian, I had a question from Andrew, just on the topic of Chambers of Commerce. Is there a UK Caribbean Chambers of Commerce? How do we join?
There's a British Caribbean Chamber of Commerce. There's an office in London. There's an office in Trinidad. And the chamber facilitates connections in the food and drink, ports and logistics, agribusiness, oil and gas, chemicals, education, ICT, healthcare, environmental services, and overall trade. So the British Caribbean Chamber of Commerce, their website is britishcaribbean.com. The email is info@britishcaribbean.com. So if you check the website, or you can send information at info@britishcaribbean.com, you will get the necessary information. As I indicated, there is an office in England, and if you are writing, it's +44 01482 324 976.
Excellent. I'm sure they may now be inundated with calls. So yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Brian. It appears we've got some government people on the line actually. So Sharon has said UK companies looking to do business can make contact with the DIT at the British High Commissions in the region. There are apparently DIT offices in Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica and Guyana. Vincent has also said DIT can assist UK firms. Joe has said the Caribbean Chamber of Commerce in Europe can also help UK exporters. Yeah, a couple people said similar things, something that I just missed something there, but the Welsh Government, Janet is talking about the Welsh Government and DIT can support, local ITAs can support as well. So thank you everyone for those messages in. Obviously there's a wealth of support for UK exporters looking at the Caribbean market. Let's just have a look for some other questions. A big question from Sandra. I don't know if it's another Sandra, but this is kind of interesting. So Sandra's shipping products and coming across varying levels of duty depending on who is receiving our products. Some of the duties have been so high that buyers refuse to pay for the goods once in situ. So they've lost money on several shipments to the Caribbean, and she says her HS code should carry no duty, but they're charged every time. So she would like to know if the red tape can be cut through and how to stabilize the varying customs fees so that she can resume shipments.
Okay, thanks, Will, and thanks, Sandra. So it's very important to have your HS code, have the correct HS code. And if it is that the HS code is not if the product is not specifically described, then you will find instances where, depending on the country, they will charge different rates, especially when it is not specifically described. So to avoid that, I would recommend that you get in touch with the Customs Administration. Some Customs Administration have a specialized unit that deals with tariffs and HS codes. So you could ask for a ruling on the product to include the classification code, the duty rates, and other taxes and fees. Bear in mind that you will need to provide the exact product description, and you could also include information on the sector and the end use. So in short, try and get a ruling from the Customs Department. While the ruling is not binding, at least it will provide some predictability because it will be respected when you present it to the customs officer when the product is being cleared and released.
In addition to what Dadria would have said, in the absence of a certificate of origin, if you have not presented a certificate of origin with your goods, you will be charged duty. It's as simple as that. So you have to ensure that you provide a certificate of origin indicating that the goods were of British origin, and follow the rules of origin as Adadria would have outlined In the absence of that, the customs will charge you duty.
Thank you both. Really important advice there, I think. So hopefully that's been useful, Sandra, and everyone else on the call. I think that is going to be relevant to everyone on the call, I think, who's sending goods. Just a quick one from Joe, who says the Chamber of Commerce in Europe is based in Brussels, but is part of the DIT overseas network. Thank you, Joe. We've got time for a couple more questions. So question from Lucilda, I think this would be one to start with Dadria. I think you touched on this in the presentation, but Lucilda asks, how are goods treated that are manufactured in the EU before being transferred to the UK for export onto the Caribbean?
Okay, so the UK CARIFORUM Economic Partnership Agreement provides preferential treatment for goods between the UK and CARIFORUM states. So goods transported from the EU would not benefit from preferential tariff treatment. For preferential tariff treatment, the EU EPA would have to be used for preferential treatment to be applied. However, you can use inputs from the EU when the products are being manufactured in the UK, and those products would qualify as originating. Thank you.
There would have to be some sort of level of processing or manufacturing done in the UK with the EU components for them to get UK origin, essentially. Good question. We'll do one last question. It's a goodie from Anthony. Anthony has a big distributor in Trinidad. Is it suitable to use this distributor for the whole of the Caribbean market, or should he break it down into separate markets? Brian, do you want to start on that one?
Well, it all depends on the reach of the distributor. But based on the quantities, it may not make economic sense unless there is the great demand for the goods that he could send probably at 20 foot for each one of the islands. It may make more sense for consolidation to take place in Trinidad and Tobago with this distributor. But again, that has to be a conversation that he would need to have with this distributor if the distributor is prepared to do that. In the absence of the distributor trying to do that, for Trinidad and Tobago, we have a number of other distributors who has linkages right up the island, in fact, all the islands, and they can now redistribute to this distributor to go up the islands if this main distributor is not able to go up the islands. So there are opportunities in terms of what can happen from Trinidad to the rest of the Caribbean islands. There can be consolidation of shipments with other goods from Trinidad and Tobago.
Excellent. Well, I think on that note, we are starting to run out of time for questions. So I would just like to thank Dadria and Brian again for the presentations and the answers there. We hope you found that useful. Apologies for the slight technical glitch earlier, but hopefully all the important information came across. And as I said earlier, we are sharing the slides afterwards as well. We are running this series as running this webinar as part of a series on Commonwealth markets. The first one was on the Commonwealth as a whole. That took place a few weeks ago, and you can watch the recording of that on our YouTube channel. The next one will be on the Australian market on 17th August. You can find out more details about that on the export.org.uk website. We are taking a short break from public webinars until that webinar. I'm going to go on holiday, so we hope you won't miss us too much. But just a reminder, you will get that recording and the slides over the next day or so. Do get in touch if for any reason that email doesn't come through to your main inbox. As you leave, please do let us know what you thought of today's webinar and any suggestions for topics on future webinars. But for now, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.